right. Thank you, everyone. So today I will be talking about streamlining Python packages. So basically setting up private pip packages with AWS CodeArtifact. So let me fill the room for a second. No, can I get a show of hands? Who among you here have tried uploading a Python package in the cloud? Or like, all right, I see a few hands. Okay, nice. So maybe you guys are familiar, let's say, with the setup tools and all that stuff, Twine, right? That's how you basically upload Python packages in PyPy. Is it PyPy? PyPy? I don't know. Something like that, right? So this talk, basically the bottom line is I'm going to present you guys as an alternative way of publishing your Python packages in the cloud, but this time in a private yet simpler and cheap way, all right? So I hope I got your attention there. All right. So introductions. I am Gabriel Yuson. You guys can call me EG. So I am a DevSecOps engineer and head of consulting in my company back in Davao, Ingenuity Software. I'm also the AWS user group leader in Davao City. So I host meetups every month. And also workshops every month in Davao, basically just advocating for AWS and cloud computing in general. So if you have, if you plan to visit Davao City, might as well go there at the third week of the month, so you can join our meetups. All right. So basically, I would describe my lifestyle as something fractional. All right. Now, what does that mean? For short, daming racket. No? Yan, bago yun, di ba? Fractional, daming racket. I also do freelance stuff. So, ayan. Currently, I'm 3 times AWS certified. So, ayan. All right. So, agenda. So, this is going to be a very short talk. I want to make it more of interactive. So, I want more of participation from the crowd, no? So, first, I'm going to start with the problem statement. What are the current problems in uploading Python packages, no, in your in the cloud, basically, no, in your PyPy repositories and all that stuff, no. And then we're gonna have a review what's a package repository, how AWS CodeArtifact comes into play, no, as an alternative, and then of course I'm going to have a demo for you guys to appreciate, and also some use cases on how to leverage this kind of technology from AWS. All right. So, with that, no, I want to ask you a question. The problem statement is managing Python dependencies is challenging. Who among you here agrees with that? Yes. All right. So, I want to ask someone in the room, no, why is it challenging? Why is it challenging? Maybe from a developer perspective, all right? Why is it challenging? Anyone can volunteer. Maybe just 1 to 2 minutes of sharing. Maybe one can answer. All right, no one? Okay, I always wanted to do this. 25 USD AWS credits for the volunteer. Yes, sir. Yes.
Just a bit of perspective. From my experience, more of mga old dependencies, trying to
Update.
them up to date.
Yes.
That's really difficult.
Yeah. And then what if the dependency you're using suddenly was removed?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I remember there was a package in Django back then that was removed, something like Django Twee something. I'm gonna show it later. So yeah, that's one of the challenges, right? In like managing Python dependencies. All right. So first up, one of the main reasons why it's challenging. So just to give you a background, no, this talk is going to be more of in the ops side of things. No, managing Python dependencies as an operations person, not as a developer. All right. So you can debate all you want with poetry and all that stuff, V and V. That's for developers. Okay. This is a ops talk. Okay. So there, public PyPy may experience downtime. If you haven't heard, no, PyPy actually experienced significant downtime last December 2024. Now, what happens, right? If you're into DevOps, no, your CI/CD pipelines has an install part. So what happens if PyPy goes down, right? Your installation, no, fails, basically, right? So breaking CI/CD pipelines, deployment, or even development. So this is a screenshot that I have from the status, PyPy status, right? So although it's highly available, however, it does experience downtime. It's possible, all right? So what if the stars aligned and you're doing a production deployment during that time, right? That's a disaster, right? So what do you do, all right? So after this talk, I hope these questions that you have in mind on how to mitigate these things will be clearer, all right? So next, malicious packages and supply chain attacks. So PyPy is an open repository where anyone can upload packages, right? This poses a major security risk, including typo squatting attacks, right? So one example of a typo squatting attack is pip install requests, right? People might misspell it into something like pip install request without an S. Little did you know that that Python package already has vulnerabilities to it, right? That's one example. Dependency confusion. So there are these popular, believe it or not, there are these popular dependencies in Python where the attacker, or like the malicious person, keeps on updating the repositories to make it look like it's been used, right? I will give you examples in the next slide. So another is compromised maintainers. So basically, if there's a package that's pushed right into a very popular package and then it wasn't checked well, little did they know there's a vulnerability to it, right? So that's those are one of the major risks, right? So as I was saying, one example of dependency confusion is this, right? In 2021, attackers uploaded malicious versions of well-known Python packages like python3date.util and PyTorch, stealing environment variables and credentials, right? So, who among you here are familiar with PyTorch? The official name of PyTorch in the Python in PyPy is torch, right? There is no package named PyTorch. If you say pip install PyTorch, chances are you are using a different package, right? So these attacks happen, right? Another example is python3date.util. Python date.util is a legit package. However, it's spelled as Python date.util, not python3date.util. So these are the common attacks that we have right now in our ecosystem. But this is not also just popular in Python, but also in other languages, right? So how do you mitigate those things, right? So as a DevOps engineer or someone from the ops part, right, it is your duty to basically do security scans and all of these packages to check for vulnerabilities, right? And I'll explain later on how AWS CodeArtifact can do that for you, all right? Now, next, package availability guarantee. So what I was saying earlier, no, PyPy does not guarantee package availability forever. So if a package is removed from PyPy, it is no longer accessible, right? One example for that is this one. So this is a node example. Back in 2016, a developer deleted the popular leftpad npm package, so basically causing thousands of JavaScript projects to break. A similar issue could happen on PyPy. All right, it happens. And back in 2018, the Django TastyPy package was unexpectedly removed, leaving projects scrambling for replacements, right? So long story short, what can you do, right? What can you do to avoid these kinds of problems? AWS CodeArtifact. Talk done. All right. So basically, AWS CodeArtifact solves all of these challenges by providing a fully managed private repository for Python packages. All right. So before anything else, before I deep dive into CodeArtifact, let's first review, like, how do you even upload a package, right? How do you even upload a package to your package repositories? All right. So what is a package repository? So who among you here is familiar with these technologies? So npm, that's what you use for JavaScript applications. You have PyPy, of course. Cargo, for those who's Rust developers out there, and we have Gem, right, for Ruby, right? It's quite a common standard in all these programming languages to have these kinds of package repositories. So what is a package repository? So a package repository is a system that hosts and distributes language-specific software packages. Take note, the keyword there is language-specific, all right? But what is an artifact repository, all right? An artifact repository, on the other hand, is a broader repository that stores build artifacts, binaries, and other dependencies. And it's not limited to a single language. That is a repository. That is an artifact repository. Now, a Docker image is considered an artifact. All right. So you might get the analogy here, right? So basically, these are some of the few and popular artifact repositories out there. You have Docker Hub and Artifact Hub. So basically, Docker Hub is an artifact repository that stores your Docker images, right? Maybe in AWS, we have ECR that does the same thing, right? Artifact Hub is also, it's a artifact repository that stores your Helm charts, Kubernetes, right? So that is an example of an artifact repository. All right? It is used in CI/CD pipelines for storing the following. So basically, compiled wheel files or tar files, Python packages, right? So for those who has experience in publishing their Python packages in the cloud, these are the build files that you are actually going to store, right? So these are the two files. Another is, of course, CI/CD, Docker images, right? You build Docker images in your CI/CD and basically store it in your artifact repositories. And of course, jar files for Java, dev files for Linux, right? All right. So, CodeArtifact is an artifact repository that supports multiple languages and stores both source and built artifacts. What I'm saying is, the reason why CodeArtifact is an artifact repository, not a package repository, is because it's capable of storing more than one or more languages. All right? So, what does this mean? It stores both source and built artifacts. All right? So, let me give you a scenario. All right? Maybe you have, you want to publish a Python repository just to roll it out internally to your team. There's no reason why you should upload it to a public package repository like PyPy, right? Because you only want it to be for internal use. Now, for internal packages, there's a high possibility where secrets are involved, which is bad practice, but it's possible, yes. Right? So, in a more Python sense, AWS CodeArtifact is an artifact repository that supports PyPy packages and stores both source and built Python packages. So built Python packages, those are the packages that I'm saying that you build internally. However, source Python packages are the packages that's already uploaded in the PyPy repository. All right? All right. Now, this is an example of a repository in AWS CodeArtifact. So just to pique your interest, right? As you can see, it is capable of multiple upstream repositories. So, for example, I have a package from NPM, right? I can store both NPM and PyPy packages in one repository in AWS CodeArtifact. All right? So, don't worry, we are going to discuss how this works. All right? So, there we go. Works as a private PyPy repository, no need to rely on PyPy uptime, right? So basically, if pipe is down, you can still use your packages. You can still install NumPy and all that stuff, pandas and all that stuff, right? Next is caches dependencies from PyPy. So faster installations, right? One of the most gruesome part in like creating CI/CDs is the install part, right? Especially I've experienced, especially like if you have a very big monolith in Django, right? There's a lot of dependencies, not only in the Django side, but also in the Linux side, like the server side as well, right? So if you want some faster installations, why not cache it in CodeArtifact instead, all right? So reduced internet dependency. Next, IAM-based security. So it restricts access and ensures package integrity. Those private packages you are uploading to CodeArtifact is only accessible to those who can access it. All right. It's not like if you upload a package in PyPy, right? You see, everyone can see it, right? So that's one of its benefits. And another is version control. So packages are retained even if detected from PyPy. right? CI/CD integration, so it's optimized for AWS code build, GitHub Actions, Jenkins, and etc. Right? Now, how does it work? All right. So before that, we need to be familiar with the terminologies. So basically, domain, the top level namespace, repository. This is where you store your Python packages, and the upstream repository, which is PyP. All right. We're gonna understand that later. Okay. So let's go for a demo. All right. Let's create our own Python package and upload it in AWS CodeArtifact. So basically, I am going to make a helper function that does basic arithmetic with two numbers. So basically, add two numbers, subtract two numbers, divide two numbers, multiply two numbers. Easy, right? So, and then let's use this package we have in another project. All right? So, there we go. AWS CodeArtifact, when you go to the AWS Management Console, this is how it's gonna look, right? So we create a repository. So one thing, I named my repository commons, and then the public upstream is PyP store, right? And then I make the domain. So a domain is some kind, most often than not, it's the company name. So basically that. It serves as a namespace for all of these repositories you have, all right? All right, so there we go. Review and create, and it's gonna show us this, right? Domains, these are the list of repositories in my domain. So I have a domain called PyCon demo, okay? Easy. Now, if I go to commons, since I haven't uploaded any packages yet, it's empty. So let's do that right now. All right? So this is the Python package that I want to publish to AWS CodeArtifact. Now, maybe you guys were using Twine, setup tools, no, in uploading this. But actually, Python has come up with poetry. So maybe the Gen Zs just use poetry, right? But I've before in the AWS meetup back in Davao, I presented this talk over there, and I used like the traditional one, like setup wheels and all that stuff, Twine, and then there was a lot of problems. So whenever you're creating, let's say, whenever you're creating a package that you want it to be consumable or used internally, or maybe an open source repository, right? An open source project, I highly suggest poetry because it's very straightforward. I've used CodeArtifact with NPM, and the magic with NPM is just you can just say npm publish, npm build, and it's over. Same. That's what back then. That's what I was trying to basically find for Python, like the developer experience, right? So with poetry, you just say poetry publish and it's done, right? It's very useful. All right. So this is basically the package that I want to publish to AWS CodeArtifact, right? So I hope it's another, no, you can see it here. So basically what I did here is I exported my AWS profile, which you shouldn't do. But just for the sake of this demo, I did. Okay? So you need to have, if ever you're using GitHub Actions and all that stuff, you need to basically create that GitHub OIDC identity provider, right? That's the best practice. And just do practice principle of least privilege. So this AWS profile I have is admin. So I don't recommend, but for the sake of this demo, let's just do that. All right? So this command, so I basically initiated my AWS profile, and then I got my CodeArtifact auth token. So this process is actually very similar with Docker, right? First, you need to log in to your Docker repository, and then you publish. There's nothing new. This is also the process on publishing your packages in CodeArtifact. All right. So I got my my repository endpoint, this one here. So this command gives me my repository endpoint, and then I used my repository endpoint to basically configure my poetry repositories. All right, simple enough. All right, and then in order for me to access that endpoint, as what I've said, we're using a private repository. We're not uploading this to somewhere public where everyone can see. I'm doing this for internal use. All right. So that is why, in order for me to access this repository, I need my CodeArtifact token, which is generated through my permissions. All right. All right. Now, it's so easy, right? Just poetry build, and then it gives you the artifacts, which is the wheel file and the tar.gz. All right. It's so straightforward, and after that, poetry publish. That easy, right? So once you publish this, no, go back to your CodeArtifact repository, and you will see that package I have here. All right, internal helpers, publish. So basically, R there, no, the R flag there, commons. That's the name of my repository, as what I've indicated here. Repositories.commons. So, for example, if you want to publish to the original PyP, repository, you can just remove the R flag, right? That's how it works. Okay. So now that we have published our package, let's try to use it in another project, right? So this is another project. So first and foremost, I activate my virtual environment. And then I added a source, all right? As you can see there, poetry source, add CodeArtifact. This is the name. This can be anything. Let's say poetry source, add my company something, all right? And then my repository URL, all right? This then is going to add this. This then is going to add these lines over here in your pyproject.toml, okay? So there. Now, next is we try to install the one uploaded in our AWS CodeArtifact. There we go. So poetry add internal helpers from the source CodeArtifact. Now, if you remove this flag, source CodeArtifact, it's going to imply that you're going to get that repository from the PyP repository, right? And that will throw an error. Chances are it's going to download a different package. All right, but you will know because you have the version tag, right? All right. If the version tag you installed isn't the version tag you're expecting, then chances are that's another repository. That's another package. All right. All right. Now we can then use our package in another project. All right. Seems easy enough, right? But to reiterate, this is a private pip, right? This isn't accessible to the public repository. All right? So if I run this command, right, Python, PyCon demo 2, main.py, it works like a charm. All right? Now, what if you basically say poetry add pandas, right? As what I've said, CodeArtifact stores not only your build packages, but also your source packages, right? So this pandas is basically gotten from the PyP directory itself, all right? So what happens is, it then adds to CodeArtifact, all right? So in an event that PyP goes down, you won't have any downtime. It's because it's cached here in the AWS layer, and it's faster, right? It makes you it's faster in installing stuff, right? Use cases. Now, this isn't Python. This is language agnostic. So as I've demoed earlier, it can be used by helper functions, right? It can also be used in design systems. Now, what if your application has, I'm talking about a front-end application, JavaScript, sorry, PyCon. So front-end applications, basically you have a React application, right? And then you have a main app and an admin app. In the main app, you already have your buttons designed, right? Text, right? So it doesn't make sense if you just copy-paste everything and then put it all in the admin app, right? What you can do is convert those components in your main app into a package and then just npm install internal button, something like that. npm install internal header, right? That's possible. It boosts developer productivity, right? Next is distributed systems, right? So this example is my favorite use case, all right? Integration with AWS CDK. Now, who has seen Donnie's talk a while ago about AWS CDK? Okay, so just a review, right? I do DevSecOps, so I do a lot of infrastructure as code. So AWS CDK is sort of like Terraform, right? But then I can use, or I can basically code my infrastructure in AWS as Python, right? That's the power of AWS CDK. Basically, it looks like, IAC, yes. So basically, it looks like this. This is how I do my Lambda function in AWS CDK in Python, all right? Now, what's the problem here? Now, if you have a distributed systems, right? If you're deploying a microservice, chances are you have multiple repositories in each services. Now, if you're doing a full serverless way, let's say you have a auth microservice that's made in Lambda in AWS Lambda, or like serverless, right? Or like you have a shopping service and all that stuff, right? As a DevSecOps engineer, right? What would you do if your CTO says that you must upgrade all runtimes, right? So basically, you go to each and every repository and update the runtime of your AWS, of your Lambda function, right? That's a pain. So what I do is I basically create a custom construct, all right? But what does that mean? No? Using AWS CDK as a DevSecOps engineer, I want to configure, I want configurations to be consistent, reusable in all of our microservices/repositories. I want to protect developers from accidentally overriding configuration, and I want to future-proof my infrastructure. This is the problems that I have right now. So, yeah, all right? So, I did a custom construct. No? Basically, what this means is that I don't want my developers dabbling with the runtime, right? I don't want to enable them. I don't want to make, basically, I don't want them to change the runtime. I don't want them to change the memory size, right, of my Lambda functions. That's one thing, right? But this can be anything, right? It can be an S3 bucket. It can be an EC2 instance. Now, if you're in the security and compliance space, if you're dealing with regulations, you must know that all S3 buckets must be versioned, right? What if a developer suddenly changed that configuration, right? You don't want them to have access to those things, right? Only you should have access to those things. So what I do, I create my custom construct, all right? And I upload it to AWS CodeArtifact, okay? So instead of this, right, instead of using the normal CDK Lambda function library, I created my own, right? So basically, since I uploaded this to AWS CodeArtifact, I can just say poetry add custom Ingenuity CDK constructs source code artifact, all right? And I can just import it, right? And then basically use it. That way, it's regulated. There is no option where I can change the runtime here, right? There's no options where I can, in an S3 bucket sense, there's no option that I can turn off versioning. Everything is controlled. And if there's an event that we need, okay, all of us needs to update our Lambda functions runtime to Python 3.13, right? I just go to my commons repository, update it, and then publish it to CodeArtifact, and I'm gonna say, hey, everyone, update all your constructs, right? There's also a tool for that, right, in GitHub and all that stuff. So it can be automated, all right? So as what I've said, in an event where we need to update our AWS Lambda functions runtime, we just update the runtime in our custom AWS CDK construct and publish it to AWS CodeArtifact. So you don't need to be an open source maintainer to publish your own Python package, all right? And that's all for me. Thank you so much. So you can connect with me in these links.